Hey everybody, it's Chainsaw Gears 12 and welcome back to the Megadeth discography. Today I'm talking about the 2009 release entitled Endgame. So, 2 years later after United Abominations, we only have one lineup change now that's on Endgame. The one lineup change is that Glenn Drover, who played lead guitar on United Abominations, is replaced by Chris Broderick, and a lot of people will say for the better that that's the better choice. Chris Broderick is the right choice. And to some people, I understand why they didn't really enjoy Glenn Drover, his playing style on United Abominations, but in my personal opinion, I did enjoy what he brought to the table for that album, but overall, looking at the bigger picture, looking at this album particularly, that Chris Broderick is the better choice, because Dialectic Chaos, which is the opener of this album, which is a 2-minute instrumental, which is basically one big guitar solo, you get to see the chemistry between Dave Mustaine and Chris Broderick, and it really shows how good these guys work together, how well these guys can come up with these solos and to put them together and make it all one big guitar solo to open up this album. And for that, this album is very aggressive and sets you up for what the rest of the album is going to be, basically, or what most of it's going to be. So yes, I do have the computer here, so I do not screw up song names, because that's just bad, okay? So anyways, the thing about this album is that it's kind of a continuation of United Abomination. It has some of that aggressive side that we're used to know from the 80s and the early 90s of Megadeth, and then has some of the groovy things, some of the pulled back Megadeth style, which is in the later 90s on this album. And the only thing that really changes this album up from United Abominations, because it tries to follow that same formula, giving you both sides of both worlds, 80s style of Megadeth and 90s style of Megadeth, is that this album just feels more aggressive. The sound of the guitars, the way the production is on every little thing on this album makes it sound heavier, more aggressive, and just overall a darker sound. And I enjoy that, because United Abominations, don't get me wrong, was an amazing sounding album. I enjoyed a lot of things, but it didn't have that dark tone, that darkness that I love from some of the Megadeth stuff in the past. And Endgame just feels like it's a darker version of United Abomination with more aggression, just more dark stuff put into it. I use the word dark a lot, I know, but that's what I get. That's what I keep thinking in my head, is because just the thinking about the guitar tone they picked, some of the songs, This Day We Fight, which is the second track after Dialectic Chaos, which is probably some of the fastest playing I've heard from Megadeth in a long time. Some really fast riffs in that track. Songs like Head Crusher, and even the opening to the ballad, people would call it, which is the hardest part of Letting Go, Sealed with a Kiss. That opening, just the acoustic guitars and that, sounds dark. I mean, it's beautiful if you really want to go down that route of saying, oh, Megadeth is beautiful, but just the acoustic guitars sound beautiful, but it's dark, and that's what I enjoy, is that there's some darkness behind some of these things on this album, because it makes this album stand out more, in my personal opinion, than what United Abominations did. I enjoy the aggressive side of the Megadeth from the 80s, because that's basically Dialectic Chaos, This Day We Fight, Head Crusher, a little bit of the title track Endgame. 44 minutes is not really aggressive to the extent of the songs I mentioned, but it has some pretty aggressive moments. There's some aggressive parts on this album besides some of the initial tracks that I just named. But then there's the more pulled back Megadeth, the kind of groovy Megadeth, just the grooving along, which is Bite the Hand, Bodies, How the Story Ends, and then part of The Right to Go Insane, which is the final track to end the album. And I just enjoy that the mixture is still there, like it was in United Abominations, because that really switches it up a little bit. It's not a continuous thrash, 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 thrash. We're getting some heavy metal. We're getting some pulled back Megadeth. It's not a continuous, like, okay, it's never going to stop. It just keeps going. It could get tiring to people, but I enjoy that there's that mixture still there. So let's go to the sound of the band, and then after that I'll give my final thoughts about this album. And yeah, so anyways, to Dave Mustaine, let's talk about his vocals. His vocals on United Abominations, I felt, were really top-notch. His lyrical content was very political. On this album, some people say that his vocals are going a little bit downhill here. I enjoy what he does with his vocals. He doesn't really sing as high sometimes on this album as he was doing on previous albums, The System Has Failed, United Abominations. But I just enjoy some of the grittiness behind his vocals. I enjoy what he does with his voice, how he pronounces his words. Lyrically, I feel like this album has some variation. It's not as political. It does have some political stuff, don't get me wrong. We're talking about Dave Mustaine here, but it's not like a complete album of just political stuff all the time. There is some variation, and I like that. He does some acoustic guitars and piano, it does say on my cheat sheet here, and I enjoy a lot of the acoustic guitars on this album. It was really good. I mean, there's very few, but I enjoy because it's really dark, like I was saying earlier, and I like some of the piano bits on this album. It was really cool to hear that. It's really nice to hear some different stuff from Megadeth besides the typical vocals, rhythm, lead, bass, drums. So that's it's neat to have a little bit variation. Chris Broderick and Dave Mustaine, rhythm and lead playing. They do both. Like I was saying before, how about Dialectic Chaos sets up the album and how it has basically one big guitar solo, the chemistry between the two players, lead-wise and rhythm-wise. The rhythm playing, it's amazing. It's tight, it's aggressive. That guitar tone they picked for the rhythm is just epic. And to the lead playing, like I was saying about Dialectic Chaos, that I've already mentioned three times now, is that really shows you how the rhythm and the lead sound, I mean, at least the tones, and then the actual playing, how the chemistry there works as well. Besides the playing style, it's just the sound of the rhythm and the sound of the lead combining together that it works very well. It goes together very good. Very good, very well, however you want to say it. It goes together very well, and that's what I enjoyed, is that throughout this whole entire album, Chris Broderick brings some shredding solos, some melodic stuff. Dave Mustaine, shredding solos, some melodic stuff. So I enjoyed that those two guys work very well together, because if they didn't, this album would probably not work right, or just work at all. And so Chris Broderick, amazing. I was blown away by a lot of the lead playing he did. Same thing with Dave Mustaine, so I can't gripe about that at all. James LoMenzo on bass. His bass guitar is turned up. Of course, the same question that goes in my mind. I wonder what David Ellison could have done on this album, but we all know it's not going to happen. But James LoMenzo, I feel like that he really stepped up on this album. United Abominations, he had some really cool moments, and he did very good on that album, but I feel like he stepped it up on this album because there's more aggressive stuff, and he's going to play a little bit faster. And he does play some different stuff besides what the guitars are playing, but overall, I enjoyed what he brought to this album because he really stepped up and really did some pretty interesting things, so I can't gripe about that. Now, Shawn Drover on drums. A lot of people who are Megadeth fans, and maybe not so much Megadeth fans, but people gripe about Shawn Drover's playing live and all that stuff, and he doesn't have the soul like all these other drummers from in the previous times in Megadeth. And I enjoyed the overall, looking at the big picture of Endgame, I enjoy his drumming. I enjoy what he brought. I enjoy the sound. I enjoy what he played on this album. Now, I will say this: there was a little bit stuff throughout the album that I was going, well, maybe he could have did something a little bit more here. He could have did something a little bit more here, maybe to make the song more exciting. But overall, looking at the big picture, not just nitpicking every little thing, I enjoy what he did on drumming. So I can't gripe too much, but there's a little bit of gripe. He could have did more stuff here. Could have made stuff more interesting. But overall, like I said, one more time, big picture, he did a pretty good job. So overall, all the sounds, Dave Mustaine's vocals, everything combining together on each track. I enjoy the production. Everything works together. The band is tight. This is a very good lineup for this album. And I just enjoy what this album was. A heavy dose of thrash and heavy metal and pulled back Megadeth. It gives you some variation, and so you're not getting tired by the same formula each song. There's some variation in there. So overall, my final thoughts is, in my personal opinion, this is one of my favorite Megadeth albums. Am I saying it's one of their best albums of all time? No, but just in my personal opinion, it's one of my favorites. I just really enjoy what they did, and I love this album. I bought this album, and I listen to it almost every week, every so often. There's a lot of other music I listen to, but overall, Endgame, it's an amazing album. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. That's what I'm giving it. So, anyways, guys, that's the review. If you liked the video, like the video. And if you like me and you want to see more, click my name or subscribe to see more. Thank you guys for watching. See ya.